carbon products that are being produced. And I'm hoping that, tell us, do you do lobby days and things like this in Tallahassee, or how do you address these issues with other groups? I know we had demonstrations that we participated in, trying to educate people and delivering petitions and things before. What other plans do you have, and what is your outreach? How does that operate, and with other organizations?
Okay, well, thanks for asking. We are very happy to be a grassroots-driven organization that also looks to working at all levels of the government. So we're driven by people power, but we are also looking at impacting things through days like lobbying days, which we will be having a major lobbying day that we do in conjunction with other organizations led by Rethink Energy in Tallahassee on February 6th. Will be the Reclaiming Florida's Future for All Lobby Day on environmental issues. As how we get a lot of our work done, Food and Water Watch was an incremental founding member of the Floridians Against Fracking Coalition, and we work alongside other fantastic organizations and individuals in order to mobilize power throughout the state. We also recently are a founding member of the Tampa Bay Climate Alliance, which focuses on issues here in the 6 counties around Tampa Bay, which are Sarasota, Manatee, Hillsborough, Pinellas, Pasco, and Citrus. And we then go into communities and work with the groups that are already there, offering support, and then also building our own framework that allows individuals to come together to put pressure. So like you had mentioned, we've had days where we get in front of leadership's offices and have press conferences and go and speak to the office and deliver petitions. We've had over 120 locally elected officials and over 250 businesses sign on for a ban on fracking in our state. And so our coalition continues to grow. There's been over 90 communities that have passed an ordinance or a resolution encouraging banning fracking. And we then take the people who are involved in this and help them to lead themselves in this grassroots effort as well by having call campaigns, letters to the editor, rallies, protests. In fact, on January 10th, we have an exciting statewide day of action we'll be doing, and to call on Governor DeSantis to follow through on his environmental executive order that said DEP needs to oppose fracking. Will be 1 year since he took office and passed that sweeping environmental executive order, but as of now, it is merely talk because it hasn't been put into fruition. We also are looking to put pressure on our leadership, Senate President Bill Galvano, based out of Manatee County, and House Speaker Jose Oliva, who both made commitments last year that they would hear a fracking ban on their chamber floors, but when given the chance, neither did. And so we listen, we show up, and we hold our elected officials accountable, and we do that through the great people power of Floridians.
That's great. That's excellent. You know, I'm sitting here thinking, what is it going to take? They've already had one disaster here in Florida, and, you know, I guess it kind of ties into another one here, too. It's kind of off the subject, but it's kind of a parallel. You know, we have how many kids or how many people and kids have died here in Florida due to mass shootings, and yet still there's no action on these assault weapon bans and so forth. You know, and it really makes you wonder what it's going to take. I guess another huge oil spill and another disaster, and we have then the tourism industry would really be up the creek, because the tourism has suffered. Not only that, but we've suffered from the environmental impact we've got from the red tide, as you well know, in this area. We've had immense problems caused by this. I know people who got sick from it. I know how much it hurt the industry over here and the tourism industry. And I don't know what it takes to get people to wake up. It makes you wonder. I mean, the logic when we have alternatives that we could use for power here, and yet we're still relying on all this carbon being pumped into Florida, and for what? For corporate greed. That's what it boils down to. I'm going to throw a stat at you here and see if you've heard about this, because it ties in here when you mentioned before the corporate greed. I was amazed looking at this. We have other crises here in Florida as well, and one of them is housing, and that is brought on by the fact that since 1978, 40 years, the average pay of the average worker, hourly worker or salaried worker, not the top executives though, has increased by 28%. That's the actual increase that's averaged. Compare that to the top 500 or top 1,000, whichever was the survey was done on, the pay of the chief executives. Would you want to venture a guess to what that percent of increase has been?
I would guess it's over 1,000%.
You are exactly right, over 1,000%. And then you wonder why and then people wonder why we have problems. People can't afford housing and so forth here. It is a crisis for us, and it's going to get worse unless we try to be more equitable. And this goes back to how we spend our dollars here in helping our climate and helping protect our tourism trade. If we have another disaster like we had with the BP oil spill, or something, or the red tide that continues with the red tide, what's going to happen? There are alternatives that we can look at. And do you have, when you work with your organizations that you work with and so forth, what percent can you think of? What percent do you spend in talking with what different groups? I mean, in different corporate, are you able to reach into some of these corporations and do education meetings or something, especially with some of the ones that have a more corporate conscience, on our environment?
I would love to say that we were doing that and that was an effective means for making change. However, we don't spend our time doing that because we've found it is not an effective means to effectuate change. So what we have found is, like you said, these corporations, the executives are finding ways to make more money, make themselves wealthier at the expense of the people. They're putting profits over people. And that is not going to stop because we give them a lecture or we give them some educational materials. All they'll do is try to greenwash it to make it look like we're doing just enough to look good in the public, but not actually changing the policies and procedures to the extent that they need to change. Bottom line, we need to stop fossil fuel production and phase it out by the year 2035. Climate scientists in the IPCC report last year from the United Nations agreed across the board that we need to phase out fossil fuels completely. If we allow the industry that's been subsidized and continues to be allowed to get away with out taking heed of our environment to regulate themselves and allow themselves to phase out, it is not going to happen, and we will be in climate chaos. That is why we need to take drastic, bold steps to use the power of the people to say we've had enough. This isn't on us. This is not us. We are not the ones causing the pollution. We are not the ones causing the climate degradation. It is these corporations that are causing over 90% of the greenhouse gases that are destroying our Earth. And until something stops them in their place, they're going to continue to do that.
Exactly.
And that is something that we fight strongly for.
Brooke, we're out of time here, in about 30 seconds, give me some final thoughts here you have, okay, before we close out.
We can mobilize to win a livable Florida and a livable future. There's real solutions that we can do to protect our communities. We can transition off fossil fuels by 2035, increase energy efficiency, and build climate resilience. And that's why we need to call on our electeds like Governor DeSantis and our legislators to transition Florida to 100% clean renewable energy by 2035 and to ban the dangerous procedure of fracking in the state of Florida. Together we can. We need to fight like we live here.
Thank you, Brooke. It's been great talking with you, and let's wish you good luck in the future here, and we're going to do everything we can to help get your message out. And again, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much, Steve. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, this has been Steve Ryan with the Coastal Rainbow Forum on Society Bites Radio, and we are hoping you'll tune in for our shows, and thank you so much.